Yes, you see, that's something I find very dear, that nurses during war will treat all sides, and that means a lot to me actually, because everyone is in need, and it's very endearing to be able to give that care and to show compassion to someone in that time of distress. But yes, Argentina, to go to Buenos Aires was, it was an amazing experience, to go and meet veterans. I mean, we're all much more senior, and yet there was still so much enthusiasm, life, and this coming together. And you realise that a veteran is a veteran all over the world.
Hello, I'm Dan Fox. I'm the National Chair of AJEX, the Jewish Military Association, and Chair of its podcast, For Honour's Sake. For the final episode of our first series, we're here today at the home of Sue and Julian Warner in Belfast. Julian is a retired lecturer, and Sue is a veteran of both the Royal Navy and the NHS. Thank you both for having us today.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's a privilege to have you here.
Well, we're very glad to be so. The honour is all ours. Sue, I wonder if we can start, as we always do, at the beginning. Where were you born, and what was it like growing up?
Yeah, I was born in southwest London, in a little place called Hampton in Middlesex. Now, not a lot of people know about Hampton, even though Henry VIII lived there with his 6 wives. But yes, growing up was amazing, really, because I went to school right opposite to where I was living, and it was an all-girls school known as Lady Eleanor and Hollis, and it was quite amusing those years. I mean, if you've ever watched Centrillions and Alistair Sims acting as the headmistress, we had a headmistress just like that, ooh, girls, and it was hard. It was hard because being in an all-girls school is quite competitive, but I think one of my saving graces was that I was able to study well, and I got through to my O-levels, A-levels, and it was at this point I started to think about, well, what was I going to do?
And so the interest in nursing and medicine developed from a very early age for you. When did that start overlapping? When did that start becoming part of your ambitions to pursue a military career as well?
Yeah, now that happened when I first of all thought, perhaps I'll go to Guy's or Bart's, and then I actually met a lady who actually shared that she'd spent some of her time in something called the Queen Alexander's Royal Naval Nursing Service, and I thought, that's interesting, and she said, well, the training was really good, and you might get the opportunity to travel. But I must admit, when I went to my interview, matron was quite strong on the fact, no, there will be no travelling. You won't travel more than the Gosport ferry, probably. But then how many thousands of miles later in my life that I've travelled.
Absolutely.
But yes, and I just found myself more and more interested. So I looked up, well, what is this Queen Alexander? So I read up about Queen Alexander being one of the patrons to the Quans, and how she dedicated her crossed A's, and that became part of the uniform and still is today. And it was also that the service was serving the Royal Navy. Now this meant as well they would care for civilians as well. Also we would work in NHS hospitals and units. So I thought, actually, I think I'll apply and see what happens. So I applied, and I remember in those days we would go off for a weekend, 2 days, where you would be almost giving it a trial. What would it be like to leave home and go down to Portsmouth or Pompey and to Royal Naval Hospital Haslar?
And what year was this? How old were you?
I was now about 16. Now that's, today that would be, you'd have to have a responsible adult with you, but in those days off we got on the train with your little case and off you went. So I went down for this interview and met some other girls as well. Which
was been the late 70s then?
This is the late 70s, yeah. And it was just interesting, an interesting experience. And we met other nurses there, and they all shared, oh yes, it's a good training, and I think, you'll value this, you will. And of course, the interview in those days, you sort of, it was quite scary. You walked into this room and there's this matron sat behind a desk with her superintendent nursing sister and another senior sister. And they're all firing these questions at you. And you're sitting there as a little 16-year-old trying to explain, why would I want to be a nurse? And anyway, I got the letter through and it said, yes, I'd been accepted. So I joined up.
Wow. So the Queen Alexandra's Royal Naval Nursing Service, Cairns as it was known, and it wasn't at this time quite part of the Royal Navy, but it did have a very interesting history. It wasn't founded by Florence Nightingale, but by people that had been around her in Crimea.
Right.
Or...
That's right. It was founded by Mrs. Eliza Mackenzie, and now she's another interesting lady. She lived in Portsmouth at the time, and she was absolutely devastated that these ships would moor in, and all these men getting off, and they were very sick, very wounded. And she sort of thought, this isn't right. We need to have something for these men to come to. They need medical care, they need nursing care. So this is how it sort of sprung off. And Mrs. Eliza Mackenzie did spend some time with Florence Nightingale as well. So yes, it's so interesting how it grew. And what is so beautiful about the Queen Alexandra's is that, they served, during World War One, they served Korea, Vietnam, Falklands, Iraq, Afghanistan. I just think it's such a beautiful service.
Right, absolutely. And as a 16-year-old, you're starting training with them. Had you even left home before? Had you even been much outside of London even before this point?
No, not at all. No, it was such a big step to actually pack a bag and to get on that train. Even that 2 days away was a tester. How would you feel moving away from home? First of all, with complete strangers. How would that feel? But I must admit, even though it was such a big step, it was something I didn't regret. You soon make friends, you soon settle into the area, and you soon get to know, like Portsmouth, Gosport, Southsea, etc. So yeah, it was quite, first quite scary. And I don't think you realise how scary it is, especially as you're just going to start a training course as well. You will be studying, you will have to write essays, you can't go out with your friends because the essay's due in, etc. So you'd have to be quite good at organising, planning your work. So yes, it is quite a big step.
Before we move on to talk about your time in the Cairns, just coming back to your childhood for a moment, was there much in the way of Jewish communal life in Hampton for you and your family?
Now that's really interesting because when we look at south of the river, Hampton. Now in Hampton, in about 90, I've got to get my dates right. I think it's 19 in the 60s. 50 families had moved south of the river between Kingston, Twickenham, Richmond, Hampton. And it was sort of felt it would be nice to have a community, to have something these families can get together, because it was quite isolating, really. My parents had moved to Hampton because of their work with the National Physical Laboratory, NPL, in Teddington. And that was a lot of people were employed from this community at NPL. So it became a kind of, it was rather nice, a nice community of people coming together. But what they did was they met in a Quakers meeting house in Kingston. And it's rather lovely, this, because it offered all these extra activities. It'd be the table tennis club, or you'd have the cycling club. There was even a play reading group that set up, the coffee mornings, the sharing of meals together, and of coming together. It was kind of very, very meaningful, and all the funny stories too.
Sure.
You know, like the fireworks evening, where my father and his friend managed to go into the shed, as you do, where all the fireworks were. They both lit up a cigarette, and of course up they all went. As you can imagine, they were not popular. But yes.
Prepared you for a war zone or two, though.
It did actually. Yes. It did indeed. Yes.
So, for those first few years, as essentially a trainee, a junior nursing officer, would that have been the rank?
No, not in those days. No, in those days you would have been a naval nurse.
A naval nurse.
NN,
right.
for sure.
An NN.
Yeah.
You found yourself training and really operating all around Britain, or was it still just very much in Portsmouth and a few other places?
Yeah, when you started training back then in the 70s, yes, we started at Royal Naval Hospital Haslar, but you had secondments because, again, the NHS would give you more experience, say, in midwifery or children's work, older persons' work, etc., mental health. So you'd have various placements. Now, I was very fortunate to have placements in Plymouth, so that was lovely. You know, went to Mount Gold Hospital and Freedom Fields Hospital. So it was rather nice to have that opportunity to meet other nurses from other NHS hospitals as well. A very good, I would have said, preparation for when you do leave naval nursing and you go into the NHS. It was quite helpful actually. So yes, I did have that privilege.
And then in 1982, not quite suddenly, but building up over a relatively short amount of time, a crisis over British territories in the South Atlantic turns into a full-blown conflict with Argentina. And you're spoken to by the matron one day about the hospital ship Uganda. Now, I'm just about old enough to remember the Falklands War, and the hospital ship Uganda is one of the sort of the iconic terms of the time. Like, it was one of those aspects of the task force that people were very aware of. It had been, I think, deployed originally, or it had been part of a sort of almost educational ship in the Mediterranean that the British were using, but it was to be refitted and sent off to the South Atlantic. As were you.
Yes, it was rather interesting. Now, what had happened was the Uganda had already left Gibraltar and actually was already heading down south when a signal came up, and it was that they had this realisation, oh my goodness, we need more specialist nurses, we need more medics. So I was then approached by matron. Now, I was actually on night duty at the time.
Was this the same matron who told you you'd go no further than the Gosport Ferry?
Yes. Now,
it was. There you go.
Yes, see, now that was rather comical, really, because I thought, yes. Now, how many thousands of miles is this? But what she actually said was that I would be leaving on the Monday. Now, this was Saturday evening, and I was thinking, what? I've only got this time opening to get a case together and to head off down south. So, I remember thinking, oh yes, she did say, you will finish your night shift first.
Of course.
Well, yes, of course.
And what did your family think of this? I mean, did you even have a chance in those? I mean, these days, obviously, we'd be able to call by mobile or put a Zoom in or an email. You'd have had no chance to see them before you went, I assume, at all.
That's right. It was kind of trying to get a phone call through as well. Now, isn't it typical the one time you want to phone them, they're out? So and of course, in those days, you didn't really have voicemails either.
Nothing, no.
So I had to keep trying, and eventually I did get through. And it was almost as if they thought I was going on holiday. No, not quite
no.
a holiday, no. And then I think the realisation hit. Because I wrote to them when I'll tell you about that. I actually had to fly down, you see.
It was quite the odyssey to get there for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, because the ship had already left. I think they were already engaged in combat. It was just absolute putting together this group of people And off we went. But we had to fly, first of all, from Bryce Norton. Mind you, very nice on a VCD. It wasn't like the Hercules. Oh, yes, we've all experienced...
Just the words Bryce Norton make me shiver with memories of...
We all do that. But no, this was a nice VC10, but it had been changed. They'd painted, which was quite funny. You saw them out there with the brushes, red crosses onto the plane, and explained to me about the Geneva Convention, and that this was very important because this particular plane was carrying medical nursing personnel. It also had stretchers, medical equipment on board, so they were having to literally obey the rules that was a medical plane now.
And had to be identified
as such, absolutely. So on board we get. Now that was a little bit dramatic too. We go up into the air. A very nice officer in front of me is now standing in the aisle with headphones on, talking to the captain, and I'm thinking to myself, something's not right here. And sure enough, something had happened to one of the engines. Down we had to come, everybody off, and while they fix this plane.
Right.
So anyway, they eventually fix it, and off we go again. So we get to Dhaka. Now, in those days, the pilot...
West Africa.
That's right.
Wow.
West Africa. Now, do you all remember what was happening there at the time? There was martial law on. So it was kind of, you were forbidden. You could not get off the plane. You just had to stay where you were. And of course, in those days, the aircraft, the pilot and the navigator were terribly kind because they, ladies, there's only three of us, three women. Would you like to see the cockpit? We'll show you around. And, I was absolutely thrilled. I was absolutely thrilled with this opportunity to see the cockpit. And they said, you've got to come back before we land because you'll see the most, amazing sunrise. And of course, we're all up there having, look, yes, it's absolutely amazing. But of course, today, absolutely forbidden. No way can you go into a cockpit of an aircraft.
No longer, no.
So that was an absolute honour and privilege to have that experience. And then from there, we then flew down to Ascension Island. Now, Ascension Island, which I hear today, is a very lovely place to go to.
It's like a nature reserve these days, isn't it, or something? Yeah.
Yes, and there's a lovely hotel there apparently, and the beaches are nice. And I'm thinking, it wasn't in 1982. It was just, it was you flew in, and it was just this hut. That was it.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, oh my, I'd love to go back and see it now. And then we actually flew to Montevideo, Uruguay. Now, at that time, Uruguay was staying neutral. If you've got Buenos Aires there and Chile. So Buenos Aires is really surrounded by two countries that were staying neutral. So we get into Montevideo, which was a little bit of an experience too, because the plane gets surrounded by various guards with guns, and off comes our luggage, and they're opening it, and you just see your night dress shown, and you think, oh my goodness, and of course, much to the amusement of the rest of the people that were with you, and then we were escorted onto transport to the dockyard to meet up with HMS Hecla. Now, HMS Hecla at the time, as you know, had been a survey ship, but was now acting as an ambulance to transport casualties, which would have been from the Red Cross box to Montevideo, where then the RAF would come on. And
so by the Red Cross box, you mean literally an area of the marine offshore that was designated as under Geneva Conventions as a medical area.
That's right. And so it was, again, it was something new, that a ship did not take women in those days, and yet through history women have gone to sea. So this was again making history that here we are, three women.
So I'm right in thinking, this was really the first official time that women had been deployed on a naval ship by Britain to a war zone. This really was trailblazing for you.
It was actually.
And how old were you? You were 22.
I think I was 22, and yes, just coming up to my 23rd birthday, which was there. Of course, they celebrated, But yes, it was just an amazing experience to be on board this ship, and the first officer was very worried. And he really was strict. We were only allowed to go to the sick bay, and that's where we were accommodated, or you ate in the wardroom across the way, but that was it. You were not to fraternise with the men, you weren't to do anything with the men.
So how many other women were there on the ship with you?
Another two.
Just the three of you?
Three women. Now,
and they were all on the nursing side of things, or other roles?
Yes, they were all nurses. We were all junior nurses, and I'll never forget that experience, because I thought there's only one thing to do here: to make friends with the ship's crew, and to help with seasickness, because that was another thing. I had never been in such rough seas as the South Atlantic, and I thought, oh my goodness, to get your sea legs, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask the NAFI manager if I can help serve in the shop, because that way I can take my mind off and distract myself from feeling sick. And it worked. Yeah. It absolutely worked. And
it must have been a permanent sort of pitch and roll.
It was. It is absolutely incredible.
Was the ship kind of sailing around, or was it anchored?
It was anchored at this point, but then what happened was, for that 5-day journey from Montevideo down to the south, the seas can get extremely rough, and
especially that time of year.
That's right.
Southern Hemisphere, it's winter.
That's
it's the middle of everything.
Yes, I mean, it was extraordinary, this, because I'll never forget, there was the one evening the first lieutenant said to us, well, we're going to turn the ship into the waves, so it's going to be extremely rough. Right. And I remember thinking, and he explained it, the ship would go up, down, round to the side. Oh, lovely, thank you. And you were sitting somewhere, you could feel yourself sliding all over the place. But what was so good about that experience was to make friends with the crew and to become popular with the crew. It meant so much, actually, because you become like the agony aunt. They're telling you all their problems, or if they're writing a letter to loved ones, what would you say, sort of thing. And also, I just enjoyed kind of having that privilege too, to have a ride in the Wasp helicopter. I mean, that was just amazing.
So where did that take you?
Yeah, that was just literally, it was one of their exercises. They were explaining to us that the crew have to do these exercises, and they asked and said, well, would you like the experience? I thought, well, yes, I would, actually. So I was fascinated. They actually took me up and down the winch, and I've never done anything like that in my life. Fortunately, the crewman's with me, thank goodness. I don't think I'd have fancied that on my own. And it's not till your feet leave the deck that you suddenly think, oh my word, I'm up in the air. This line. But no, I found that a very, very humbling experience, and to help the first lieutenant out, he had something called Jimmy's, which of course the first lieutenant's nickname is Jimmy, where he would be asked to do something. It was sort of similar to what Jimmy Savile did in those days with the you wrote in and said, right, experience.
Yeah. This guy will fix it for you.
Jim will fix it. And that's what it became known as, Jim will fix it. And of course, they had written to him. And they would always do outrageous things. You can imagine this. And this one was ballroom dancing lesson. So he comes to me, this first lieutenant, and says, well, would you teach them to ballroom dance, because that's what they want? So I thought, oh gosh, this is going to be fun, isn't it? And in the next minute.
And was this something you'd done? But was that one of your hobbies and interests before?
Fortunately, fortunately at the school.
Right.
Yeah. It was compulsory that you did ballroom dancing. Thank goodness they didn't ask for the tango. There would be no chance. But no, this was just a basic waltz. So I remember thinking, I'm going to have to make the best of this. So all the ship's company gathered in the galley, and back went the tables, and the ship was fairly steady, not too bad. On came the music, the Blue Danube, I ask you. I thought, oh my gosh, that's a bit fast. And, sort of did this lesson, how to ballroom dance. And then I thought, well, to finalise it, I'm just going to get the first lieutenant to dance with me. And of course, they all loved it. So it's a great success. And afterwards, as it was our last evening on board the Heckler, the captain requested our company to have a glass of sherry. Now, that was quite funny. we went and sat in the captain's cabin. I mean, it was huge. It was like we've been living and what you've been living in. And we're sitting there having this sherry, which I must admit, you sort of saw it sliding along. And then the captain, when we arrived on the Uganda, had written this absolutely wonderful report about us. Saying how helpful we'd been, how the ship's company found us really helpful. So I was really kind of touched by that, because that was something out of the ordinary.
Absolutely.
How many, women at that time would have been on a little ambulance ship, which was actually a survey ship. I mean, it was just an amazing experience.
And then onto the, hospital ship Uganda. The nature of the conflict, nature of the war and the battles in the Falklands meant that there were a lot of casualties with quite a variety of injuries and wounds. It must have been a challenge, a nursing challenge in and of itself, but to do it on a ship as well must have had its own sort of specific problems.
Oh, it does. You just don't think about it, that when we make up a dressing trolley, here we have the trolley and off we wheel it. Well, there's no chance that's not going to happen. Or you're trying to change someone's IV, maybe a blood transfusion, and you're sort of standing there trying to line it all up and get it running, etc. And of course, gravity's different. And you have to think about these things. You have to think about how you're going to apply a dressing, how you're going to bandage a wound, and of course reaching over to somebody as well, because where I was working, which was in the hull of the ship, had been used for the accommodation for all the children. So it was a great facility to have. You had all these bays. But of course, in reaching over to somebody, it's not easy, particularly if the ship's rocking around at the time. So yes, it's a very different type of nursing, and I think you learn to really think on your feet and to be quite inventive and innovative, and that's something that really stayed with me. Yeah.
And so finally, in June of that year, how long the ceasefire is put in place? How long had you been on the ship at that point? How long had you been permanently at sea by then?
Yes, well, I'd been there since, I think, May, June, July. Oh, don't forget, we didn't come back till August, so it's about 4 months.
So you were 4 months
at 4 months at sea.
But there was a point where you got to visit Port Stanley itself.
That's correct, yes. After the ceasefire, we stayed behind because there were still casualties to nurse, and matron very kindly gave us permission that the ships on the little vessels which are attached to all these great big luxury liners, we sort of went ashore, which was quite funny actually, because we weren't kitted out. We didn't have the proper gear. So very kindly, some of the casualties were saying, well, look, perhaps my jacket would be helpful, or my pullover might be useful. It might help to keep you warm, and gloves and hats and scarves, etc. So off we went ashore, and it was just an amazing experience to walk down this high street. And the one little shop there at the time, and meet some of the local people too. And I made such dear friends. Sadly, one has passed, but my other two friends I'm never going to forget, Lard and Jan. They absolutely fascinate me. I mean, what courage they showed during the conflict.
Are they still Falklanders?
Yes, they're still Falklanders.
Wow.
They're still there. I mean, my hope is I would love to go back and see them.
You have been back once, I think?
I've been back once,
yeah.
But there is something I would just like to see them again,
of
because
course.
I think what Lard will remember, I mean, he was called Lard for a reason, but he had such a sense of humour, and we would go out in his Land Rover, and there was one day we got stuck in the mud, and I mean, it took ages, because we had to get local people to come and help us. And of course, there's no mobile phones, anything like that. I think it was just obvious when we didn't return, something had gone wrong. And of course, being the islanders, they realised that, they're stuck in the mud. And they had to come and get us out.
And when was this? When was that return? When was that return visit that you made?
That was the pilgrimage, 2007. I think I've got that right. Yeah, I mean, we had to reenact that again.
So that was the 25th anniversary.
It was the 25th anniversary. I mean, it's hard to believe.
I know. And then in 2022, for the 40th anniversary, you attended with Julian some commemorations in Argentina itself. Must have been particularly poignant because, of course, it wasn't just British casualties that you'd been treating on the Uganda. It had been Argentinian casualties as well.
Yes, you see, that's something I find very dear, that nurses during war will treat all sides. And that means a lot to me, actually, because everyone is in need. And it's very endearing to be able to give that care and to show compassion to someone in that time of distress. But yes, Argentina, to go to Buenos Aires was, it was an amazing experience to go and meet veterans. I mean, we're all much more senior, and yet there was still so much enthusiasm, life, and this coming together. And you realise that a veteran is a veteran all over the world. We all have similar experiences, and it was the sharing that really touched me. I think one pilot particularly shared that since the conflict, he actually couldn't be a fighter pilot ever again, but he was now an air-sea rescue pilot, and he devoted his life to helping those in need. And I was just so touched by that, so very touched, but a very, very special time.
Absolutely, and we've got a photo, again, we'll put that up with our socials as well, of the Rose of Peace that they gave you, a symbol of that reconciliation, made from scrap recovered from the conflict.
Yes, you see, that was again something I wasn't expecting. It was actually my birthday the day they gave me this Rose of Peace, and I was just so humbled that there was this coming together of men and now their wives and their families to share. It was very, very special, and I don't think any words can ever explain that connection. I think there's a picture of Sergio and myself. We're standing at the commemoration, and both of us, it's such a poignant picture. There we are, together, and another colleague of mine who actually served on one of the hospital ambulances, he was also present. And he's still serving today. He's one of the longest serving personnel. But it was so poignant to have that experience and to be on this Argentine military base, which again, this was history because no British person had gone on one of these bases, and yet they had invited us to go and share that time and to even give just a short little talk to them. I was just, it was just very, very special.
One can only imagine, and again, it's such an important point, that connection between veterans, absolutely. So you eventually returned to British shores in August of that year, a couple of months after the ceasefire itself. And there wasn't really much messing around. It was sort of 2 weeks off and straight back to work as far as matron was concerned.
That's right. You see, now, fortunately today, there's a lot more debriefing and a lot more care taken on people having time to really just unpack their experiences. But yes, this was straight back in, and I just found myself questioning. I wanted to know more. So I asked matron if she would grant me permission to go and do some more training and some more specialisms, and she said yes. But I had no idea that I was going to get caught in Project 2000 in nursing, which meant that you all had to now have, degrees became part of nursing. In my day, you went to a school of nursing, but now it was to the university. So I did. I went off to university, and did my first degree, my second degree. Then I went into the specialisms of mental health, children, still doing adult nursing. And it really was just again an amazing time to meet other nurses that had these specialisms, their experiences, and I just found it such a privilege to meet such amazing people, and to also have the opportunity to work with the NHS.
And you took your own education at this point as far as a master's, or
That's
even
right,
further?
to a master's level.
And again into a particular specialism on the nursing side? Or?
Yes, I particularly took on mental health because I was just so interested in mental attitude, values, how we are. If we're positive, you're likely to have a better outcome. If you're negative, it's a poorer outcome. I was so intrigued at this, cognitions, neuroplasticity, that the brain can rewire, can refire. And I was just so interested in that stress or anxiety, depression, that it's taking sometimes that pause, that time, just to step back. And again, all those techniques, ground yourself, deep breaths, taking in nature, being able to look at thoughts, the ones we all have, I'm not good enough, it's just so important to realise that actually we are good enough, and to develop mental, emotional health. So yes, it became very important to me.
And on the military side, the medical operations, medical services are increasingly tri-service at this point. And you're based mainly at Frimley Park in Surrey.
That's right. Now, that was another experience because now this tri-service comes along, and Frimley Park was another very special time because just along the road is a mental health unit. And I was, again, given time and secondments to work there as well, and to work within the local community in Surrey too. So that was again just such an experience. So yes, it was again further changes happening, and nursing changing too. Now nurses didn't wear dresses anymore. We were in trousers to be in line with the EU. So yeah, it's interesting how change and progress come in too. Yeah.
And it was, I suppose, a relatively quiet period in terms of your own deployments and operations. You weren't. I don't think you were sent abroad again at this point or anything like that. But of course, 2001. 9/11, the world changes, obviously has a profound effect on the military, but also on the NHS at this point as well, because there's an increased request from the military side for the NHS expertise.
Absolutely. And this was something, I'll never forget it, the day that the Twin Towers, I was with a patient at the time, and he was sort of going, have you seen it? Have you seen the news? And I hadn't, actually. I didn't know what he was talking about. So his wife very kindly said, I think you better come and see this. So she took me into one of her rooms and showed me the television, and sure enough, oh my gosh, it was just incredible, absolutely incredible. And yes, there became this increasing demand that the military needed expertise from the NHS, and I was so very touched by people's responses and their volunteering willingness to go and do what they could.
Absolutely. So just to be clear, you're sort of a naval nurse at this point, but working in the NHS, which is still very common across military medical services to have that overlap. The Khan has become officially part of the Royal Navy by now.
That's right.
And you are actually almost overnight commissioned.
Yeah, it was. That my friend and I will never forget it. We kind of came off duty, went to bed the next morning, got up, went into work, and somebody called you Mom. Pardon? It was just, And to understand and unpack that, what it meant, even the uniform changed. Up till then, you wouldn't have really known who was who or what. But now we had badges, and now the uniform was beginning to change, and that was quite an experience to have that actually.
And eventually you were, I think the rank was senior nursing officer, which I think is about the equivalent of captain. It's about the sort of third promotion you would have had as officer, or?
If in the Royal Navy, it's about a lieutenant. You see, this has always confused me because the Army have, if I've got it right, lieutenants, captains, majors.
That's right, yes.
Yeah. So it's slightly different. In the Royal Navy, you could be a midship person, you could be sub-lieutenant, lieutenant, then it goes lieutenant, commander, commander, captain. So there's a slight difference. So yes, and for the RAF, I've only recently, funny enough, I was at a forces reception, and very kindly a high-ranking RAF officer was explaining to me about the Air Force. So I had no idea. So I've learned a lot about flight lieutenants and squadron leaders, etc. So yeah, it was such a change. But I suppose that's something in our lives, as we go through 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, it is that progress, it is that change that is important.
And the other big change at this time as well is that men are also now allowed to take up the nursing trade in the military.
Absolutely, and that is I think that is wonderful. And I think it's wonderful too that, I think I've got this right, that women are also serving in like the Royal Marines bands. I don't know if there is a Royal Marine woman. At the moment. Fantastic. I think it's absolutely fabulous that things just opened. I think it's rather lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. My first training officer when I was in my phase one was, again, an Army Reservist. He was a nurse in his day job and a captain in the CARANC, the Queen Alexandra's Royal Army Nursing Corps, the Army equivalent of the Khan. So through 2001 to 2003, it's the first 2 years of the war in Afghanistan. It's very much begun and it's building. You've seen quite a few of your colleagues in the NHS side of things mobilised as medical reservists to serve over there. I think especially there was a call for thoracic surgeons.
That's right. I think the specialisms became very apparent, and I think also the need for even children's specialists as well. So yes, I think sometimes what can happen is you realise, yes, we do need these specialisms. We do need to have people who thoracics or orthopaedics, children's work, mental health, of course. And I think it was more recognised that this is so important, yes.
But it's at this time that your career is timing out, as the military would call it. Essentially, your contract's coming to an end, and this also coincides with an opportunity to do some further study, and so you leave.
Yes, that's right. And then I found myself working in the NHS. And it was just an amazing experience, to be on various wards or departments or work in the community as well and gain more experience. Also to study again was just wonderful, and to make such lovely friends too. So it was a very, very special time.
But you don't quite completely leave, because at some point you sort of come back in as part of the Royal Naval Reserve.
Yes, it was interesting. We're now getting sort of into 2007, 8, 9, and it's really interesting that more cries went out that actually we need more nurses, more specialists, and it just felt that I was thinking of my grandmother, how she in World War II offered her services, even though at that point married women, it wasn't sort of considered, married women would be nursing. But I remember that and thinking, well, if I can help, I certainly will. And again, it was this poignant time of meeting up with other friends too.
Yeah, absolutely. And by 2009, April 2009, you are actually mobilised and deployed again to Camp Bastion in Helmand province, Afghanistan. I kicked up a couple of months later, though we didn't meet at the time. But that would have been for what I think was by then the Roll 3 hospital on Camp Bastion. And unfortunately, very busy place. A place I was familiar with, thankfully not for my own treatment, but obviously a number of comrades in there for, again, very sometimes different reasons, sometimes more civilian reasons. You know, all sorts of illness happen in war, but obviously with the increasing use, especially of IEDs at the time, and the, for want of a better phrase, really innovations that the enemy, the Taliban, were developing for those. And it must have felt quite similar to what you'd seen and been dealing with all those years beforehand in the South Atlantic.
Absolutely. It is amazing how science and innovation moves such at a pace when you are in these situations of working with trauma, severe injuries. And it's just incredible how you just think, oh yes, now this rings a bell. Now when we had this before, we did this, and you think, yeah, it works, it does work. And I think it's how it informs for the future, which is so beautiful. I love the idea that, you know, we know now to treat someone as soon as you can. It's just wonderful. I mean, you know, here in Belfast, in Northern Ireland, has had so much experience of this. And I think it does inform, it does help us to think through how we work with a casualty in that situation.
Absolutely. And you were working with Afghans as well at this point.
That's right. Yes, you see, again, what a humbling time to meet people who were sharing their life with you, what life was like for them. And the specialisms, the training they'd gone through. I mean, it's just very, very touching. And I think now what I'm sad is that a lot of those women are back at home and have lost.
Since the Taliban took back over, yes.
Which is quite devastating, actually.
Absolutely.
And even, you know, some of them would bring in their most wonderful needlework or graft work, and beautiful.
Yeah. And this was a 6-month deployment, which was about right for the time. So the 6-month deployments were the normal sort of length, and you returned again back to the NHS, but the transition was to sort of civilian life was more difficult this time.
Yes, it was actually. It was amazing actually. I think when in 1982, when Matron just sort of said, right, everybody back to work now, this time it wasn't so easy to just go back to work. I found myself, for example, I would go shopping and I would be in the shop and I couldn't remember where did I put the trolley. I looked along the cereals and I just found myself just staring. I couldn't fathom out what packet of cereal did I want. And then things like I became very kind of couldn't remember where did I park the car. And it started to really concern me. I was getting, I suppose what we'd call it today, fog-brained. I was zoning out, and it wasn't easy to kind of hold this, because you do think, oh my goodness, I'm going mad. Perhaps I've got early onset here, dementia. And you really do start to feel a little bit kind of, wobbly. And it's not till, which I find, again, helpful, that you start talking to other veterans and they, oh yes, that's understandable.
It's particularly difficult for reservists, though, isn't it? I mean, I remember, as I remember coming back myself, and by this stage, one of the sort of developments in terms of the military's approach was trauma risk management, but it still probably wasn't taken as seriously as it should. And our TRIM interview was essentially, "Are you all right? Yeah, I think so. You know where we are if you need you." And as reservists, you sort of try and go back to Civvy Street and you're not with your unit and those that you served with. So it does become a struggle, really, that adaptation, and just try to understand and really comprehend what it is that you've been through and what you've seen during your time mobilised.
Absolutely. And I really think you tend, because we're all veterans, we all tend to be hard on ourselves. Why am I feeling this? Just pull myself together. And I do think we can have high expectations of ourselves, and we do then put ourselves through more. And I just think what I mean by putting ourselves through more is we try to carry on, try to be like okay, and yet you're not okay.
Sure.
And to go and talk to a doctor feels, I can't do that. I've just got to work this out. I've got to keep going with this. And I think what I've learnt over the years now is that I think mindfulness has been one of the most wonderful helps in giving you that space, that time.
Now, I've also heard you talk before in the context of your mental health after that tour of Afghanistan about, I think, an American therapist called Tara Brock, who you found particularly effective in her approach, and especially what she calls RAIN, R-A-I-N.
Yes, I think Tara offers some wonderful insights, actually, and RAIN does mean a lot to me, because what she's really trying to say to you is, if you can recognise what's happening right now, and where do you feel it? Is it a tightness in your chest? Is it your throat that is tight? Pains in your stomach? Is it tightness in the neck, the shoulders, the lower back? Tightness in your legs and your ankles? And what she's trying to do is get you to get in touch with your body, because the body will keep the score. The body has a muscle memory and knows where pain and hurt is. And I think it's a great idea to give yourself that space, that pause, just to recognise, well, what is it that's happening to me right at this moment?
So what does RAIN stand for in that context?
RAIN actually stands for that your first step is to just recognise what it is that's happening to you right now. Is it a thought? Is it an emotion? Is it pain? What is it that is absolutely bothering you at this moment? Then she will say to you, well, once you've just recognised, can you allow it to be? Can you allow it to be there and to be as big as it needs to be? Now, sometimes something like anger, it may be that you have to just allow that anger just to be. And how big is it? Does it go all the way off to Mars? Does it go all the way out to Jupiter, to Neptune? And just allow it to be. Or would you find it helpful just to put that emotion, maybe it's hurt, maybe it's pain, just onto another chair and ask the question, where does it hurt right now? So you're giving yourself permission just to be with it, rather than trying to hide it away, push it down. And of course, one of the most difficult things sometimes is to go, actually, I'm going to reach for the bottle. I'll have that glass of vodka, or I will smoke, or I will overeat, too much sugar, too much fats. And what she's trying to say is, well, can you just be with this at the moment? Can you delay? Can you distract yourself? Can you just decide just to be with this feeling, emotion, this hurt, whatever, at this moment? Now, the third part she will ask you to do is to just do a little investigate. Now, she's not asking you to go into, great big psychoanalysis, but just to investigate it a little bit. Well, where's it coming from? Is it a low mood? Is it anxiety? Is it fear? Is it something that's I've had a memory about? I've remembered something from an experience. Is it something somebody said to me or did to me? And can you just unpack that a bit, that it's okay to have this little inquiry. And the last part is she's actually saying to you, well, can you nurture this? Can you show yourself some compassion, some kindness? Now, I think that word we bandied around too much. And I think what it really means is compassion and kindness are on different levels. You have kindness that you can show to yourself, i.e. maybe you sit quietly with a book you read, maybe you do a jigsaw puzzle, maybe you go for a walk, maybe you notice something in nature, that tree, that bird. Maybe you find it helpful to be around horses at that time. Maybe you find it helpful to do some artwork. Mm-hmm. Maybe you find it helpful to act, to do some drama or singing perhaps, or play an instrument. So I think there's that level, but there's also other levels that sometimes it could be, I know in our day it would be sort of, oh well, go and have a nice bath and put the candle on or put some music on. But that's true, there is that part to it, but then it can go deeper than that. Perhaps it is listening to some music, because what you're trying to do is activate your senses. What do you hear? What do you see? What do you taste? What do you smell? What do you touch? I think this can be very, very helpful in working through your senses to understand and unpack. Is it a belief? What is it that is bothering you at this moment? And I think it goes further, because it then is about, well, what are your thoughts? Are they positive? Are they negative? Are they intrusive? Are they obsessive? Are they ruminating? What is it that's driving this? And where does it come from? Sure. Is it negative messages you've been told about yourself? So yeah, I think Tara Brach offers a tool that can be very, very helpful. Definitely.
So those who would find that more interesting and would like to explore it, that's Tara Brach and Rain, R-A-I-N. Talking of senses, I must apologise for those who are hearing a little bit of interference in the background. No need to adjust your headsets. We do unfortunately have some rather extensive tree surgery going on outside, for which apologies. One of the other things that helped you heal at this point was sport.
Yes, indeed. Now, that's interesting. See, sport was far from my mind at this time. I mean, probably leaving school, I'd say I hadn't really done very much. Maybe in the Royal Navy you might have played an occasional game of hockey and suffered the next day. But yes, I found that, again, part of the compassion, the kindness, is that sport can be helpful. Movement can be helpful, dance can be helpful, Pilates can be helpful, yoga. So yeah, I found myself getting more intrigued about, well, actually, if I move, if I do something, like, and in this case, it was swimming, I actually found getting into the water very, very therapeutic. Now, we know from research that can help. A lot of people like cold water swimming, for example. And we also know that sometimes if you just put cold water on your face or put your hands into some cold water, it can help calm the nervous system, which of course you're trying to do. The nervous system has gone into a reactivity. The sympathetic part is all sort of geared up for survival, fight, freeze. And you're trying to calm this down. And one of the ways is something like swimming can help, because in that swimming pool, it's your lane, your swim. You have got to think it through. What position is my body in? How am I using my arms, my legs, my torso? How am I using my head? How am I breathing? So I think it opens up your life to explore more and to become curious about the therapeutic effects of water. But yes, I actually started to learn to swim. Now, would you believe in 1982 I couldn't swim? And what is so interesting is that now health and safety take it very seriously, that if you go on board a ship, you will go through a life-saving, exercise, how to put your life jacket on, a bit like on an aeroplane, you go through the safety procedures. And I mean, it was something I didn't think about in 1982. And it was only now I started to think, oh my goodness, yes, you do need to be able to swim. And I was so blessed because at our local swimming pool, a swimming coach took me on. I mean, I was really in awe here because to work with someone who's more senior in age was just quite humbling. And she would spend time with me, helping me to learn to swim. And to my surprise, I really got into it, front crawl, back crawl, butterfly even. And breaststroke was probably my weakest stroke. But I just found myself loving it. I even wanted to know how these strokes came about. Why did they come about? And to my surprise, I met now some colleagues down in a recovery centre, and they actually said to me, haven't you not thought about applying for something called the Invictus Games? So what are you on about? Well, Invictus, it was a poem, wasn't it? This guy, master of your fate, etc. What's this got to do with sport? Well, actually, there's all these sporting events that help to promote recovery. So I thought, okay, again, I just put my request in, made an application, and to my surprise, I was actually accepted and joined the 2016 team in Orlando in the swimming team, of all the things, swimming. And again, it was such a privilege and honour to spend time with veterans, with others who were also sharing. Oh yeah, I've had that experience you went through. I've had that. I know what you're sharing. And that witnessing can mean so much to you when you're really in the absolute thick of kind of trying to work out, why is it I'm having these experiences? Why is it I'm feeling low in my mood? Why is it I'm not feeling I'm coping? But to go into the games was like, oh my goodness, what a very humbling time. But also to realise how swimmers have to be so resilient and strong, mentally, emotionally, to be able to believe they can do this, they can achieve it, to actually be able to work with criticism, to work with being told perhaps, you need to work more on this or you need to work more on that. And I think it's amazing how people in sport, they're just absolutely amazing, because it's only when you do something like Invictus you realise the hard work that goes into an athlete who is training, who is looking at their diet, they're looking at what they're drinking, they're looking at their sleep, which again, all these basics that help your mental health as well. So yes. And
you also, as well, Invictus, there was also the sort of more American version in Nevada one year, the Warrior Games.
Yes, the Warrior Games. Now, again, what an experience to be part of the Warrior Games and represent Team UK. I mean, I was just absolutely honoured. And to be asked, I actually was asked to take the torch and lead the veterans out, and I was just, oh my gosh, what an honor! Just didn't expect this. Amazing. But to meet other veterans who again are sharing their stories, and also to come across people who remembered me. Now that's very humbling because as a nurse you have to be professional, but it was just so humbling to have something. Oh, I remember you. So yes, the games, the Warrior Games, were very, very poignant, and I think it was just such a time to meet other veterans, because they had veterans from Australia. I think there was some from New Zealand at the time too. So that was again eye-opening. Yeah.
And the final sort of part of your NHS story was, I think you had retired, or you sort of started retiring, but you came back in for COVID and to essentially volunteer as a nurse during that, incredible and frightening time.
Yes, you see, that was, again, I think it was my grandmother speaking again, this kind of reminder that what service can you do, what can you give, what can you do to help? And I took this very brave step to go and complete my return to nurse practice course. And it was kind of very humbling, because when I was young, I was assessed by nurses who were older than me. Now I was being assessed by nurses actually younger than me.
So you were on a career break essentially.
Yes.
during this sort of the Invictus and Warrior Games time. But again, you took the return to nursing course, the return to nursing route, and that put you right back in the middle of COVID.
Yeah, it did. And again, it was to be able to offer that experience, to be able to sit with someone who was passing, or to be able to help out somebody in a crisis, was, again, it was very humbling to be able to do what you can for another being. So yes.
Absolutely. So thank you for everything you've talked us through today. I've just got one more question, particularly from an AJEX point of view, and that's as to was there any sort of aspect of Jewish life during your service, or was that something that was sort of completely separate, your military and your Jewish lives?
I must be honest, actually, yes, it was. I did find that my Jewishness just absolutely went into the background, and I've got to be honest, and it really only came back onto the agenda was a friend of mine became a rabbi, in fact became a very senior rabbi.
Who was that?
This is Danny Rich.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it was like, I was sort of reminded, like, oh, yes, there is something, yes, and I think it's about faith. I think it's about being able to, I think I was at this time too so thankful, so grateful. I think this was something else in mental health that I found very helpful. Gratitude, be thankful. And I was just then thankful, like, oh yeah, I did have those early experiences. Hold on a minute here. And then I found myself part of Kingston Liberal Synagogue at this time. And I mean, they had a choir, so I started singing. And again, it was just this very endearing time. And you just sort of found that, yeah, it was sort of a reconnection, a rebirth almost. And just then also having that opportunity to, I think Danny held a conference in London, I think it was at St John's Wood, if I've got that right, and he asked, would I go along and share about being a veteran? And I remember going along, in fact both of us went, Julian as well, and I remember sitting there thinking, gosh, this is incredible to reconnect. Because it's true, I think in the military particularly, you can find you forget that. You actually do. Even though I must share that I've always had a faith, and I think that was very much during childhood, that faith is important. Yes, I've had questions, yes, I've had doubts at times, but yes, certainly in the military I did find that did sort of slip more into the background. But again, you do meet other people, and it's rather funny that, because sometimes I find in the military there's this implicitness almost of acknowledgement. We both know, but we're not saying it explicitly. But you kind of both have a conversation.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
quite poignant.
I know exactly, yes, I know exactly what you mean. So it's been an incredible life, and we've had some fantastic insight into it today, so thank you very much. Of course, behind every great woman, there's an equally great man, and I hope we can just bring Julian in for a couple of questions himself now. We're joined now by Sue's husband, Julian, a recently retired lecturer at Queen's University, Belfast. Julian, the subject that you've specialised in has sort of changed over the years.
It's changed over the years. The institutional context in which I was working also changed over the years, so I had to adapt to that subject. So I joined Queen's as a school or department of library and information studies, quite a small department, gradually got absorbed into a management context, so I had to adapt my teaching and research to teaching information courses to business and computing students.
And we were talking earlier about how a lot of the kind of the techniques and the research that have come into this area began during World War II on the intelligence and data side that helped us win that conflict.
Yes. Well, that's very true. That's been known at Bletchley Park probably for at least 20, in the public domain for at least 20 years. There's different forms of emerging evidence that Turing probably knew von Neumann better than was publicly acknowledged behind that. There's now emerging evidence of quasi-simultaneous invention in Germany and Japan, which testifies to the transnational nature of science.
Yes, absolutely. So even the more civilian career, but there's that historic connection to the military side as well.
In the area in which I was working, a significant number of people had worked in United States or British military intelligence during the war, developed techniques for dealing with large connections of data, and then moved into library catalogues in the post-war period.
I mean, in many ways, it's another example. We're talking about what's developed on the medical side in the military during war, then has that civilian and slightly more, perhaps not banal is the right word, but that slightly less urgent application and necessity as well. And that's been the case in your area of expertise too.
That's been considerable transference, yes.
So look, thank you both so much for hosting us today. To say thank you, there's a couple of things that I'd like to present to you. The first is, and I know you're going to be moving home soon, and I hope you'll find room somewhere in it for the AJEX plaque.
Wonderful.
That's very, very kind.
There you go. And slightly smaller tokens to AJEX pin badges as well.
Oh, thank you both very much, and it's been such an honour to meet you both and to spend.
Well, thank you. It's been an absolutely fascinating conversation. Thank you both very much.
Thank you. Now, thank you. Oh, it's beautiful. Thank you.